Hi, my name is Simon Gillis, formerly from New Waterford, married into the pier about 60 years ago. Lost my wife 3 years ago. In fact, it'll be 4 in February. Still miss her terribly, but I guess that's part of life. I had my passport stamped for Whitney Pier 61 years ago as I first met her. I was in the Air Force at the time. I was a radar technician at the radar base in Sydney. Previous to that, I spent 3 years in Whitehorse, right out of school in 1957 to 60. Came back home, worked a short period of time at the unemployment office in New Waterford, and that's when I joined the Air Force. While in the pier, I got involved with the Whitney Pier Historical Society in 1988, and it's been a very, very rewarding experience ever since. It's 36 years now and still going on. Just the pleasure of meeting all these wonderful people from all over the world. It's just a real enlightening experience. And I get to play a lot of golf nowadays, which is a very pleasant experience, 2 or 3 times a week. Even at my age, it's still enjoyable. We have a lot of fun. When I first came to Whitney Pier with the Air Force, I wasn't really too involved with the local community until I got married. I hooked on with IBM, and I found out IBM stands for I've been moved, and they moved me to Halifax and Sydney, which was a blessing in disguise. So once we got back to Sydney, I got tied up straight away with the Each One Teach One program, and the Whitney Pier Historical at that time was operating out of the school portables. That really got me involved, and I found I really, really enjoyed it. That also led me on to the other committees that I was involved with. Interfaith Committee in Whitney Pier. I did an awful lot of work with Holy Redeemer Church for 16 years, mostly serving masses, funerals, etc., and readings. We even had a short time with the Habitat for Humanity, and we had a house built in Whitney Pier for a family, which was absolutely wonderful. So that's what led me into all this volunteering. I found it very, very enjoyable indeed, and I look forward to the next year doing it again. As far as inspiration goes, just to pass on information of what life is like in Whitney Pier and Cape Breton. It's the fun of doing this and the enjoyment of doing this. It really enhances life in the community, makes it more enjoyable to live in Whitney Pier. Being from New Waterford, like I say, I'll never go back. My name is already on a monument up in the graveyard off Lingan Road. I just tell them not to rush to fill it in, but when the time comes, there I'll be, up above the pier rink with a view of Whitney Pier. I have had involvement with several different organizations at the time. Started off with the Each One Teach One program with a young man from New Waterford. I got tied up with the Sydney Architectural Conservation Society, Habitat for Humanity, the Whitney Pier Multi-Religious Committee, Interfaith Committee, Whitney Pier Historical, naturally, for 36 years. I did have a little bit of involvement with the Old Sydney Society for a short time. There was also the Association of the Whitney Pier Society for the Arts. I put 15 years in with them, and I was the featured artist on year 13 because I had quite a proliferation of paintings at the time. I just missed the old sink in the basement where I had my studio set up and cleaning brushes and all that foolishness, you know. The only problem is you got to be careful you don't clean your brushes in a glass of rum. The enjoyment of it far outweighs the expense of time and whatnot, and the fun. The fun is everything. Be all and end all. Fun. I had a wonderful, wonderful experience dealing with the people here at Mazda, as I'm now on my 7th Mazda since 1972. In fact, I gave you a photo of the original Mazda, and in the garage on that photo was my brother-in-law's car, which was a 616, and he's the one that got me on the Mazdas. He kept telling me about this beautiful little 808 4-door sedan, turquoise blue, black vinyl top, and let me tell you, coming home from Kitchener in the fall, because we never had children, we let all the guys with the children take the summer vacations, and we come home in the fall. And coming down the 401, heading for Cape Breton on a real hot, steaming day, I don't know how many cars we passed on the side of the road with steam coming out from under the hoods, and we just breezed past the whole lot of them all the way to Cape Breton. Loved it. And that was my involvement with it to begin, and I've been loving them ever since. I can usually get about 10 years out of a car. And I'm sneaking up on that now, and this one was a 2013. I got it in 2016. And it still goes and goes and goes. Thank you, Mazda. I had to talk to my salesman downstairs, and I had to tell him about the poor gentleman in the neighborhood who bought an old car. And he's complaining bitterly that because it won't start and the darn payments won't stop. Another gentleman bought a car. It was used, and he said, "Oh, it's got about 1 million miles on it, man. I think it was owned by a little old grandmother whose children lived in the South Pole." And not to be too bad, but there were two elderly gentlemen, lifelong friends, and they just recently both lost their wives, and they decided that they should take a cruise together. They did, and on day 5, one of the poor gentlemen passed away. And rather than interrupt the itinerary of the cruise ship, the captain says, "As a sea captain, I am allowed to perform a burial at sea, so I think we'll do that." And while they were sewing him up in the canvas, they got a big lump of coal to provide the weight to take him down into the depths. They said the prayers, put him over the side, and his friend was watching him sink into the depths while he was leaning on the rail, and he said, "George, boy, I didn't think you were going to get to heaven, lad, but my goodness, why should you have to take your own fuel if you're going the other way?" Thank you very kindly for the donation of this check. I found at least 3 things that I'd like to do with it right off the bat. I'd like to put $500 to the Whitney Pier Historical Society in memory of my brother-in-law and Charlie Melville. They're both long time members of the Whitney Pier Historical. I'd like to put $500 to the Whitney Pier Boys and Girls Club. And I want to drop into the CBC and drop $500 on them for Feed Nova Scotia. They're having a big do at the new college on the waterfront on Friday.